Welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm producer Ruth Brown. Today I'm joined by Representative Jaron Crane to discuss a bill he's sponsoring on Idaho's human trafficking laws. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start by can you walk me through, Representative Crane, a little bit of what this bill does?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an actual rewrite of the entire human trafficking code here in Idaho. Currently the bill, I think we're at 40 some pages, so it's not small. It's not something you can take in really quick. It's pretty in-depth, but what we're trying to do is do a complete rewrite of Idaho's human trafficking laws. There's many places in code that refer to prostitution currently, and so what we're trying to do is change that definition to commercial sexual activity, in addition to many other things that we want to talk about here on this show.
When you were presenting the bill, you talked about how you wanted to make the legislation more victim-centered. What is the importance of that?
I would say that in this bill, one of the things that really matters is that it substitutes commercial sexual activity for any form of the word prostitute to avoid unnecessarily labeling those that may be victims of human trafficking, and let's shift the focus to the actual conduct that's taking place. So we really are trying to be sensitive to that.
This is also intended to provide law enforcement with some clearer definitions and tools for investigating and prosecuting human trafficking. What does the bill do that will maybe assist law enforcement?
Yeah, the purpose is to rewrite this to make the law easier to understand and the structure the crime of human trafficking in such a way that law enforcement can more readily connect the crimes that they're investigating to human trafficking.
Are there any state level resources allocated?
Not in this rewrite. So what we're doing right now is we're getting laws on the books, definitions and terms on the books that's going to help law enforcement do the job that they're doing. I do plan to bring probably this session, but I don't know if I'll have time. We may run out of the clock. It might have to be next year, but a trailer bill that's going to specifically ask for an appropriation from JFAC to stand up a task force in order to give them detectives, in order to give them the law enforcement, in order to give them the attorneys that they need to actually investigate this. That's not in this rewrite here. It's been a request of the AG's office. It's also been a law enforcement request, and probably do something along the lines of what ICAC is doing.
Internet Crimes Against Children.
Where we stand up a unit and we give them a facility, we give them the things that they need to investigate this full time. The law enforcement agencies around the state are understaffed as it is, and we all know there's a shortage of good cops. But they don't have what they need resources-wise when it comes to the actual detectives, when it comes to the actual attorneys to go and prosecute these crimes and investigate them full-time. So they're doing the best they can. They take the cases as they come, but we are going to have an appropriation in the future to solve it.
You represent the district of, you represent the city of Nampa. Mm-hmm. In my reporting, I think people think of human trafficking often as some issue that's in a foreign country. It's not happening here. Mm-hmm. In working on this bill and working with law enforcement, what have you learned about human trafficking in the state of Idaho, in your district?
I came in knowing nothing, and now I know a lot more than, in some ways more than I want to, especially about this issue. I've worked very closely with Chief Huff in Nampa, at Nampa PD, with Lieutenant Kimball at Nampa PD. They actually brought the legislation ideas forward, and they've helped write much of this along with the AG's office. They actually let us know in several closed room meetings where they told us about things that were going on within our community and in our district, specifically District 12 and 13, which cover Nampa. And my mind was blown that right in the city where I was born and raised and have grown up in, that literally things are happening underneath our noses. There's commercial sexual activity all throughout the state. They revealed to us that the Treasure Valley, they're actually bringing victims from Seattle. They bring them in on buses to the Treasure Valley, and they start them in Caldwell. They promote them to Nampa, then they promote them to Boise, and then they ship them out to their next destination. It's unbelievable, the actual trafficking cases that are taking place here in Nampa and also throughout the state of Idaho. I had no idea. My mind was open to a whole new world that I didn't know existed.
The bill targets traffickers and criminal litigation around that. Do you anticipate any opposition? Have you heard any concerns, I suppose, from your fellow lawmakers about the bill?
Not at all. So one of the things that we did with the AG's office was we went right to the agencies that are involved and the players that are involved. So law enforcement, the Prosecuting Attorneys Association, ICOPA, the different police organizations as well, and said, hey, where are you at with the legislation? Let them all read it. The final one we were waiting on yesterday, he came up to me in the hall and he shook my hand. He said, "This is incredible." That was the last police organization that we needed. It was FOP that was going to give us their blessing and sign off. He said, "This is incredible. You did a great job. AG did a great job. We're 100% behind you guys. We'll give letters of recommend. We'll even be there to testify in favor of." It's a bipartisan bill. I mean, human trafficking is not something that is a party line vote. It is something that we all share as modern day slavery. It's something that has to come to an end, and it doesn't go into, well, it's a Republican or a Democrat thing. No, this is an Idaho thing. This is where we stand up for right as a community and as a state and say we're not going to tolerate that.
It's interesting you know that, because just yesterday, Senator Wintrow introduced a bill supporting human trafficking, and Senator Trickle also introduced a bill. His was specifically about children. Can you talk to me about what the bill does that would change law around how child victims are treated?
So to go first to Wintrow's, Wintrow actually came to me last week and said, "Will you be my House sponsor for my human trafficking bill? You're kind of the guy right now." And I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to carry that, no problem." So I'm working with her on her bill. Once she gets it through the Senate, then I'm happy to carry it through the House. As far as what Trickle's bringing, I'm not sure because I haven't read his, but I can tell you what this code rewrite that I'm doing does. This bill is going to go ahead and expand the crime of human trafficking, include those who engage in sexual conduct with the victim of human trafficking, and also those who knowingly benefit from it. The crime of providing commercial sexual activity will no longer apply to children, because children, they can't consent. So any sexual contact they have, they can't be criminally prosecuted for something they didn't consent to. So children will be stricken from that.
Do we know of any Idaho children that in the past had been charged in juvenile court with maybe misdemeanor prostitution? Is that something that had been happening?
That's not something I'm aware of.
Okay.
If it is happening, I could find out. I don't know that, but I do know that in the conversation surrounding this, we're like, kids have to be removed from this. There's no way that you could charge a kid with that and something they can't even consent to. They're a victim in this case, just like these women are. So I don't know the answer to that specifically, sorry, but it's hard for me to imagine that would take place. That'd be awful.
In the past, there have been bills run that attempted to change the misdemeanor crime of procurement of a prostitute to a felony crime. It's currently a misdemeanor for a first offense. This makes a minor change to the to procurement of a prostitute, but what are your thoughts on that, and do you expect, or have you heard any pushback on it?
Great question. No, there's been no pushback. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but on page 7, on line 32, you're going to see us change the third or subsequent conviction to actually the second. We don't see a reason to allow continual activity to go on before we say, no, enough is enough. So the first one is going to be that misdemeanor. The second time, they're going to be charged. We don't need to allow someone to continue in this activity. This is gross. This is wrong. So the first offense is going to be seen as such, but the second and subsequent is going to be absolutely charged. So no, there's been no pushback on that. There was also a catch by Senator Lakey, who's going to be my Senate sponsor on the bill, about the actual homes where commercial sexual activity is taking place. In the draft and in the RS, we had the word regularly, and he caught that. He's like, regularly? That doesn't even need to be in there. Like, it's a one-time deal. I'm like, absolutely. What is regularly? So how frequent is that? That's been stricken too. So no, we're taking it very serious. We're hitting it very hard. We don't need to see repeat offenses before we charge somebody for that.
Great. Representative Jaron Crane, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support for Idaho Public Television comes from the School of Public Service at Boise State University, providing objective and impactful research for Idaho and beyond, and academic programs with hands-on learning that equip students to be effective public service leaders.